Welcome to an experience powered by Pipe TV.
Powered by Pipe TV.
Here's the tape again, Larry. What we're seeing is what was once the compound that was built on top of a three-story structure. We have no way of telling where there were actually men in these bunkers that we're looking at, but that's what the apparent object of.
Welcome to Sessions Café. I'm your host, Kerry D. Singleton. Today, we're here in West Philadelphia at the corner of Osage Avenue and Cobb Street Parkway, where on May 13th, 1985, the infamous move bombing took place. On that date, the Philadelphia Police Department, under the direction of the city's first black mayor, Wilson Goode, orchestrated a confrontation with the Back to Nature group. A bomb was dropped by the Philadelphia Police Department on a bunker which sat on top of the Radical group's home, which initiated a catastrophic fire that killed 11 people and destroyed 62 homes. Today, we're here in Philadelphia to talk to Andino Ward. Mr. Ward was the father of the lone child survivor from the move bombing. We're going to talk to him about what really happened on that day from his perspective. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
I can't remember 15, 20, or 36 homes ever destroyed in a Philadelphia fire in one night.
Hey, I'm here in Vernon Park, right? Vernon Park, Germantown Ave. Not too unfamiliar with this section of Philly. Very historic, though, right?
Extremely.
Yeah.
Extremely. The house behind us, basically, which you'll see is a historic house, you know, that cats like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and a host of others, did come through back in the day. And,
but there's some other relevance to that house.
Yes. Yeah, the other relevance has to do with the fact that basically this is where I finished high school. Down the street is Germantown High.
Right.
But during basically my second year there, I was the president of the Black Student Union.
Okay.
And we had a walkout in protest of what the police were doing at the Richard Allen Project, which used to be down behind Temple
Pretty
University.
notorious spot, I remember.
Oh, very,
now, what year did this happen?
That was 1970. That would be 1970.
Okay, and what, freshman, junior?
I would have been a junior at that point.
Okay. Now take me back there. What happened?
So, you had the crack epidemic. You had basically, all kinds of other things. Murder, the brutality of the cops. It was just a horrible place. And we were protesting the treatment, of the people, who lived in Richard Allen and what the cops were doing. Well, we organized the walkout. We had the walkout. We're in front of the high school, basically, and at that point, it was my first encounter with Rizzo.
Right.
He came and
Frank
he was,
Rizzo, the former
Frank
mayor
Rizzo,
of Philadelphia,
and he was the police commissioner
at that point.
time.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So he shows up, all of his goons, and obviously, they break up the situation. 12 of us that were part of the student at that point, they arrested. And the interesting part about the whole arrest situation is there were no paddy wagons, no police cars, none of that was necessary.
No handcuffs.
Not even handcuffs.
Wow.
Because right across the street from Germantown High was the 14th District Police Station. Right across the street.
So they just walked you across the street?
Walked us right across the street and into, basically a cell.
Now, what happened once you got into the precinct? Because, again, Frank Rizzo and his team, the Philadelphia Police Department under his watch, were very brutal. And you're protesting.
They couldn't do that kind of thing, basically, with us. I mean, because obviously, he was a smart dude. He wasn't stupid.
Right.
So he knew, obviously, we weren't doing anything that would warrant an overreaction, basically, or an aggression.
Not that it
we
took
weren't
a
being
lot,
aggressive.
though, from
right. But, I mean, you had to have a real strong situation with him, And kids, that would have really made him look very bad. And the fact that basically it was a no-brainer for him because, as I said, the 14th precinct was right across the street.
As a young person experiencing, know, that type of a situation. How did that change you as a young person?
Well, it didn't really change me because basically, I mean, I already knew. You know, I mean, I had already seen a lot of what was happening to our people.
Right.
When I became, you know, I guess you could say the age of awareness, about 9 years old,
Mm-hmm.
you know, my father basically, you know, started to introduce me to various things. The first book he ever gave me to read was by Frantz Fanon called The Wretched of the Earth.
Wow.
And from there, basically, you know, I mean, I just inundated me, you know, with books to read and information. Khalil Gibran, the Prophet, you know, I mean, so I was way ahead of when other cats were out playing basketball and all of that. I was listening to jazz and I was reading.
Let's fast forward to your first marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my first marriage basically occurred in high school. I married a woman, Rhonda Harris.
Okay.
You know, and we kind of hit it off. She used to come over to the park. She was not part of the group of us that got expelled.
Right.
She was still in Germantown.
Right.
But because this park was like a little Africa, you know, I mean, everything we did was cultural. It was involving basically black folks. It was all about basically our history and so on, you know. So this park was like the hub of that. So everybody came to the park because, you know, we'd be playing music, bungas, sax, you know, everything went on here, art, all of it.
And that's how you met
that's how
Rhonda
I met
Harris.
her. Yeah, she was here one day with some of her girlfriends, and I met her. We talked, and you know, everything was cool. And from there, we dated, and I, you know, got her pregnant. And I come from a family, basically, it's a very religious family, you know, Baptist,
right,
and so on. So, you know, and I was also taught a very righteous, I guess you could say, existence in life as a black man. And, you know, you make a mistake, honor that mistake.
Right, right.
I made the mistake of getting her pregnant, and basically I honored that by marrying her because I wanted my son, you know, or our children, you know, to have, you know, my last name.
Okay.
Now, in retrospect, it was a very big mistake.
Right.
The marriage did not go well after a certain point. And after my son's birth, you know, we were together for about 2 more years.
Okay.
And we just really realized that, you know, we were just not compatible.
Right.
We were not the same.
So you separated.
Yeah, we separated, but, you know, we never had to go to court, child support, or any of those things because I took care of those. As a black man, again, I thought that was very important. But I used to come and pick up my son every weekend, you know, and so on. And obviously, one weekend I went to pick him up, and her mother tells me that, you know, she's no longer living there, now living with Move.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
And you were familiar with Move.
I was familiar with them, you know, basically. I did not think much of them, but I was familiar with them. But I'm like, okay, so wow, what am I supposed to do now?
Right.
You know, but she gave me the address, which was the Powelton Village address.
Right.
I went down to the Powelton Village house, knocked on the door, and if you know the properties in Powelton Village, you have to walk up the steps to get to the front door.
Right.
To the side is the porch, and basically below there's a big window on the street, you know, because that's the basement down there. So I walk up, you know, and I, you know, knock on the door, and lo and behold, John Africa comes out. Now, the only reason I knew it was him was because I had seen pictures.
Right.
Above and beyond that, I wouldn't have known.
The leader of the Move.
Right, leader of Move, yeah.
So what happened when you explained to John Africa that you were there to see your son?
Right, which is what I did. I said, you know, I'd like to see my son and my wife, you know, and completely basically nullified any existence of them and basically, you know, my being able to talk with them.
Right.
So we got into this heated discussion about 15, 30 minutes. You know, and he's pouring all this nonsense about, you know, you may be the biological father, but that doesn't make you the father, and on and on and on. And finally, basically, after about, you know, what seemed like an eternity, I just got very angry, you know, and I kind of like jumped at him, you know, and we got into a tussle. And during the tussle, 2 cats come, you know, out of the house. And one of them,
Move members.
Yeah, 2 other Move members, you know, and I don't know who they were. And I'm trying to remember basically if I can recognize the faces. So I don't know if they were Delbert and maybe somebody else. I was really never sure. And things happened so fast, I wasn't really concerned with that.
Right.
So, you know, I see them come out. He and I are tussling. One of them has a hatchet. Now, the way, as I said, the houses are made is, you know, there's a wrought iron, you know, basically fence, or should I say, you know, post that goes across the porch. During that, all I saw was this cat coming at me with an axe. Somehow, and I don't know, and I will never, ever be able to understand how I did it, but I kind of like backflipped over the railing, and I landed on the ground, on my feet, and I took off running. And I ran, and I ran, and I ran, and I ran. It's like I didn't even know I was running.
Wow.
And then at some point, basically, I just was so worn out, and as I was slowing down, I did not hear anything or anyone behind me. So I stopped and I turned, and they weren't there. So they must have broke off at some point. But that was my first encounter with Move in an attempt to try and basically get my son, and also dealing with the aspect of Move in general.
So after your confrontation, for lack of a better term, no, that would be appropriate, with John Africa and those who were part of his revolution, Powelton Village, you didn't give up the fight to find your son.
No, I did not. I just knew that basically, trying to deal with Move was going to be a definite problem. Because obviously they had this philosophy espousing, and in relationship to that, they were just not going to give any ground. So there was a second time that I actually went to the Powelton Village house.
Okay.
And by then, they had like this whole barricade of fencing and so on, so you couldn't even really get close to it.
Okay.
And, I remember, hollering, I'd like to see, my son. I'd like to see, my wife. No response.
You weren't able to get close to the building.
No, I wasn't even, you couldn't even get close to the house.
Wow.
And I'm like, trying to talk with them, and they're refusing basically to even acknowledge my existence.
Right.
And then what appeared to be a gunshot happened, and whizzed by my right temple and went into the telephone pole. And I'm like, because I didn't see any guns and I didn't see anyone with a gun. So someone had it that obviously I wasn't able to see.
Mm-hmm.
But the mere fact that basically that took place kind of like was the catalyst for the end of my dealing with Move.
And again, even after your second attempt to visit the Powelton compound, you still did not give up. You traveled to different states.
Well, I mean, first I tried to get a divorce because I figured if I can get it in court and get a divorce, then I have the ability to argue for the welfare and the rights of the child.
Right.
In a period of 3 months, I must have seen at least 10 lawyers.
Wow.
And it could have been more, but 10 I remember exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I went past the word divorce and to the aspect of who the woman was and where she was, my wife, in Move, everybody chokes like a champ.
Wow.
I mean, they like
hands off position.
Hands off, right?
Wow.
No, we can't deal with that.
Wow.
You see, at that time, basically, if you were going to get a divorce, it had to be basically someone has the papers served on them and so on. There was no fault.
Right.
So obviously, the whole problem was nobody was going to serve papers at a Move house.
Right.
They saw everything.
House.
Yeah, they saw everything that was going on.
Yeah.
Nobody was going to touch it.
Wow.
So here I am. I can't even get a divorce. It takes me 10 years to actually get a divorce. So at that particular point, I kind of just really didn't know what to do. And I figured, I got to get on with life to some degree.
Right.
Because, obviously I don't know what I'm dealing with here and nobody seems to want to help.
Right.
And so, I started, obviously, dealing with life. I was a musician, living in Europe, and I did write to Rhonda, and I did get a letter back from Rhonda. And the letter was so bizarre about the biological this and just the whole Move diatribe. I once again recognized at that point that, you know what, this is never going to be resolved in any amiable fashion between she and I.
Right.
So, while living in Europe, traveling all over Europe, playing and so on, in 1970, I think that was 78, basically, I get this call. And, it's from the Red Cross, and they're telling me that a situation has occurred, that I need to come back home. My mother is calling me, telling me the same thing. And so, obviously, I'm now pursuing the aspect of getting back home to deal with this. And I happened to connect with a reporter, Don Fair. And Don Fair basically, knew the whole story, knew everything.
In terms of
the move situation, confrontations, all of it, And, so he basically started communicating with me and set it up where I had a smooth transition coming back out of Europe into Philadelphia and what have you, which was, I'll always be thankful to him for. I don't even know if he's still alive, to be honest with you. So, I get back to Philly. The first thing that I do, after talking with my parents and family and so on, is I, go down to, the City Hall to talk with the DA that basically I got the name of, who was supposedly handling a lot of this situation with the move incident in Powelton. And his name was John Straub. And there's also this cat named Inspector Fensel, who was the inspector, commander at that time of the police department.
Right.
And there were some other guys in the room. I don't know who they were, but I'm assuming they were assistant, DAs or whatever. Or, they were people that obviously were clandestine to some degree and trying to figure out, what my involvement is. But, I was very clear. I'm trying to find my son. That's what I want. The meeting lasted an hour. They assured me that they were attempting to do the same thing and that they would basically be assisting me in any way that they could.
So the officials were alleging, I'll use that term, that they had a vested interest in assisting you with finding Michael.
Exactly. That's the line that they were touting.
Okay.
And believe me, it was a line. So, I'm fine with this. And I had about 1 or 2 other meetings with them. And, I wasn't really relying upon them to do anything beyond a certain point.
Right.
Because in the second, basically, meeting I had, I go with Fensel because Fensel basically, and his boys want to talk with me to determine, exactly what the state of move is.
Okay.
And in their estimation and what they're saying, in an attempt to try and pinpoint at what place they have knowledge of my son may be.
Right. Okay.
So, they take me to these clandestine locations. One was on Washington Avenue in Philly. And it looks like a warehouse that's dilapidated and has nothing. But I go inside, basically, they have this whole setup going on, and they're surveilling move. They've got photos everywhere of move. And they're asking me, do you know this person? Do you know that person? Have you ever met, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, what does this have to do?
Questions that are totally irrelevant
with what I'm here
finding
for.
Your son, right.
But I'm cool because, obviously I understand the nature of, system, white supremacy. So I'm very cool because, I know where this is going and what have you, but I'm giving them the chance to play it out and hang themselves with it. So, I'm saying all along, I don't know any of these people. I have one interest. I'm trying to locate my son.
Correct.
So at that point, I also understood that, really this is not going to bode well with the authorities either. I started then basically doing surveillance myself.
Wow.
Got a van, got some photographic equipment, because I had some partners, basically, from the old days,
You went commando.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to do this myself. And I started visiting places, basically, that move. Obviously had other, I guess you could say installations or houses. Rochester, New York was one. I went, took a lot of pictures. Didn't see anything that I would say I could recognize as my son because honestly, I didn't know what he looked like.
Right, after all that
so
time.
Long. Right.
Yeah, you wouldn't have
I had no idea what he would have changed to. And from there, I went down to the Seeds of Wisdom, and I obviously, was dealing with photographs down there, and there was a lot more kids there.
That was their Virginia.
That was the Virginia, safe house.
Okay.
And I got a lot of photos, but once again, I still couldn't recognize anything child-wise that would tell me that my child was there.
Right.
So here I come, and I'm stuck, and it's like the bottom falls out because I cannot really go beyond a certain point because I can't really just walk into Move and talk to them.
Right.
They're not basically doing anything. I come back to the city, after that.
To Philadelphia.
Yeah, and, I am able to connect a meeting through the DA's office with my wife in prison. Well, that was probably the only helpful thing that basically they ever did.
Make it so that you
I could speak with her.
Okay.
So I go to the prison, and, they're in a room, and Rhonda's sitting here, and I'm sitting no further from her than you are sitting from me. But about maybe 4 or 5 maybe 6 feet, there are all these other move women. And
In
I'm
the
thinking to
same
myself,
room.
yeah. And I'm thinking, this is weird.
Wow.
And I
In a
kind of like
prison.
wanted to talk to the guard, but I could see that they were like not having it,
Right.
and they
In
didn't
other
really
words,
want to,
either talk to her with the other move women or
right,
not.
don't talk at all.
Wow.
And so I'm stuck with this,
So
and
they
I'm like,
actually
okay.
had power within the jail.
Well, I don't know
to
if it
some
was
degree.
power per se, or if it was something that obviously they had negotiated legally. That
Okay.
anytime one is being interviewed,
They all have to
they
be
all,
interviewed.
I don't know.
Wow.
I don't even know how that came about, and I didn't really take the time because that was not my agenda to try and figure that out. But I'm talking to my wife, and I'm telling her, that listen, I'd like to get basically our son out of it. I'd like to get her out of it.
Right.
And she just is motionless, emotionless, and they're looking at her, and I'm
The
looking
move
at
women.
them, the move members, the other move women, and I'm thinking, this is like bizarre. And so finally, through the course of the conversation, which really was one-sided, she really wasn't saying a lot, she drops on me basically the final words, and that is, if you continue to pursue him, they're going to kill him rather than give him to you. And I was like shocked. I mean,
They
I was
meaning
stunned. Move.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was stunned. I'm like, and I said to her, I said, are you really saying this to me? And she just didn't say anything else. And these women are like looking at me like, yeah, for real. And I'm just completely discombobulated. I don't know exactly what to do at that point. And so I left the prison, and I'm like, all right, this is bizarre. Here I am again, stuck in a situation that I have no ability to change, and nothing and anyone that can help me kind of like matriculate through this. So I'm stuck. So then, leaving there, this was the final meeting that I would have with the DA. I go to the DA's office. I tell him exactly what took place in the prison, exactly how this thing played out with my wife, and I said, at this point, I don't know what to do. And they're like, yeah, we're very sorry, Mr. Ward. We've tried everything we could. We thought possibly, you might basically be able to help the situation along. Would you consider being, say, like a gas man or, something of that nature where you could actually knock on, say, move doors and act like you're investigating their gas situation?
Gas company.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And I'm looking at him like, no, I don't think that's going to work.
Wow.
It then basically goes to, well, listen, the final thing that we have, Mr. Ward, is this. We understand, and are aware of your, Air Force intelligence background. The fact that obviously you are familiar with various things of this nature, per se.
Mm-hmm.
We will provide an entire arsenal, whatever you need, and you can obviously enlist the aid of some of your military buddies. And you can go basically to the Seeds of Wisdom and get your son. Now that verified for me that I had been on the right track. He was there. I just didn't know what he looked like or whatever.
But they knew.
But they must have known.
Right.
And they probably knew all along.
that he was in Virginia.
Right.
Right.
And so when the DA said that to me, I kind of like just stopped. And Carrie, it was like in a matter of just milliseconds, I went completely blank as though I wasn't even in the room anymore. And 3 basically voices came to me. One saying, you take this deal, you go down there, get killed. 2, you take this deal, you go down there, you wind up killing your son. 3, take this deal, you go down there, you're successful, but the minute you hit this city, they will basically pull a Mission Impossible on you and disavow any knowledge of your existence and any knowledge of their having been basically involved in what you did.
And
so
your decision was?
My decision was, I looked at them basically after I came out of like what seemed like a spell. I looked at them and I'm like, very cool, because again, I'm trying not to really show any emotion. And I'm like, look, thank you. I understand exactly what you're saying, but I need some time to think about basically whether I would accept an offer like that and how I would approach it if I did.
Mm-hmm.
I walked out, never talked to them again. Because at that point, I honestly knew that this was basically a scam. That they had been scamming me the whole time, trying to get me to become something that I didn't want to, and that I had no inclination of wanting to deal with, because all I wanted was my son. And that's when I just said, that's it. I'm done.